Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Today, the FBI announced it is backing the CIA's assessment that Russian hackers did help Donald Trump win the presidency. And in just 3 days, members of the Electoral College will officially cast their ballots to elect the next president of the United States. Some of those electors are demanding to hear intelligence briefings before casting their votes. One of those pushing for a briefing is Bret Chiafalo, who's a Democrat and an elector from Washington State. Thanks a lot for joining us, Bret.
Thanks for having me again, Tucker.
As I understand it, not simply asking for a briefing, and I think all of us would like to know more about what the intel shows or what the analysis is, but you're also saying that though a Democrat elector, you are not going to vote for Hillary Clinton, and moreover, you're going to try to encourage Republican electors, your fellow electors, not to vote for Trump in an effort to take the election away from Trump. Am I characterizing that correctly?
That's about right.
That's about right. So the obvious question is, what gives you the right to do that?
Well, I think as an American citizen and an elected elector, I have the right to discuss these grave issues with all the other electors. We're not trying to demand that they do anything. We're trying to give them the support and the information they may need to make a decision that they may want to make on their own. A lot of Republican electors have told us about grave concerns they have about Donald Trump's fitness for presidency.
Okay, but you haven't answered my question where that right comes from. I mean, you're an American citizen. Of course you have a right to your opinion and a right to discuss it, but you're not just expressing your opinion. You're trying to affect the outcome, the final outcome of a presidential election in which tens of millions of people voted, and you are in effect saying that we as the 538 electors have a right to change the result of the election. And my question again is, where did you get that right? You said you were elected by whom? I didn't vote for you.
Well, I mean, you asked for, well, the people of Washington did. When people go out and vote for president, they're actually voting for a slate of electors. That's clear in the Constitution, and that's really where I get my right. The Constitution, the instructions the Founding Fathers left for us regarding the Electoral College.
Right.
It's our responsibility to stop someone who we believe is completely unfit for the presidency, who may be a demagogue and may be connected to foreign powers, to stop that person from becoming president.
So you actually answered my question, but not in the way you thought. You were not elected by the people of the state of Washington. You were elected by a political party, not in a popular election, but with a very small number of voters. The voters of the state of Washington gave you the power to do their will, which was to see Hillary Clinton elected, and yet you're going to ignore that and vote for someone else. Now, I'm not a Hillary Clinton fan, but I just love to know why you think you have the right to ignore your whole purpose for being there.
Well, to be fair, I don't think I'm ignoring it. I've taken everything everyone has had to say through this process and considered it. That being said, at the end of the day, we have to go back to the Constitution. The Constitution does not mention the popular vote at all in any situation. And therefore, the presidential election has not happened yet. It happens on December 19th. The election of slates of electors are what has already happened. And I realize that it angers a lot of Americans that it doesn't feel like it's democratic. And frankly, on December 20th, I might join them in trying to get rid of the Electoral College. That being said, right now, we have to follow the law of the land. And for me, that's the Constitution. And I am trying to support it and respect it the best I know how.
But that's just silly. I mean, the Constitution does not suggest that you should vote in the way that you are. It doesn't say anything about that at all, as you know, in Article 2, nor in the 12th Amendment. So you're just kind of freelancing. No group of electors has ever handed the presidency to someone other than the winner of the Electoral College. So this is totally without precedent. And again, you don't have the authority that I can see. If a cop pulls me over and says, I'm arresting you, I can say, where does your authority derive from? And he said, from the state. I'm employed by the state. Your authority comes from a political party. The founders didn't anticipate that. The Constitution doesn't mention it. You don't have the authority to go against the will of the country unless you have an authority I don't know about, which would be what?
Well, and I respectfully disagree. When you look at Federalist 68 and you look at what Alexander Hamilton said about the Electoral College, he made it clear what was in the Founding Fathers' minds when they created the system. And there have not been significant changes since then. Therefore, that's what I have to look to when I look to take instructions about what my duties are. And I take them very, very seriously.
Have you read Federalist 68?
Many times, many times.
Carefully. Okay, then you might remember this line. One of the purposes of the Electoral College, and I'm quoting now, is to afford as little opportunity as possible to tumult and disorder. It was designed by Hamilton to prevent situations like the one you are trying to cause, where people wake up and they find that the president they thought was the president is no longer the president, thanks to people like you who are elected by nobody, and we have tumult and disorder. I mean, you're trying to create exactly what he hoped to avoid.
We are not trying to create tumult or disorder. What we're trying to do is, as a good example is our vigilsforamerica.com, we're trying to bring unity vigils to all across the country on the 18th and 19th to bring the Republicans and Democrats in this country, who are so divided right now, together around a leader that we can all support. So we're trying to unify the country, not divide it.
But didn't we just have an election to answer these? I mean, again, I hate to go back to fundamentals and keep asking variations of the same question, but maybe these were things that we should have discussed before the election. And I wonder what you think the consequences would be for the country if people found out that they actually had no power to choose their own leaders. People would go crazy, wouldn't they? And for good reason, right?
Well, I can't predict how people would react, but
now.
The fact is the Constitution very clearly states that it doesn't mention the popular vote at all. So given that, any assumption that the people have the power to elect the president directly is a complete misnomer.
Wait, but you're confusing me with respect. I mean, I think you've thought about this. I think you're, trying to do your best. But you just said a second ago that after all this is over, you're going to support the abolition of the Electoral College. But before then,
very well might.
you're okay. So you're against the Electoral College, but you're citing its existence as a justification for what you're about to do. I'm confused. Are you for the Electoral College, or are you against it? Are you for democracy, or are you for an electoral system?
I am for following the rule of law as it stands right now, and that's the Constitution. If we as a country choose to amend the Constitution in the future, that is a completely different situation. Because the bottom line is, the Constitution has to guide us now. I am following the Constitution, and maybe after the 20th, I may attempt to try to get a constitutional amendment to change it. Just because I don't like something in the Constitution doesn't mean I don't have to follow it.
Okay, and just to be totally clear, you are doing something that is permitted by the Constitution, but is not specified in the Constitution. The Constitution makes no reference at all to the motives of electors, makes no reference to their conscience at all. And by its omission, you're assuming you have the right, and you may be right. The Supreme Court has never ruled on this that specifically, right? So here's my question. You say that you describe yourself as a moral elector. The suggestion appears to be that people who are following the will of the states they represent are somehow immoral.
I don't think that's fair. If their moral compasses have them tell them that they need to vote for the general election winner in that state, then that's fine. That's their moral compass. When I looked at this situation and deliberated and investigated, I came to this conclusion. And I feel very comfortable ethically, legally, and morally in the decisions I've made.
Obviously you do. And I just want to make it clear that you are a Democrat. You are, in effect, pledged to Hillary Clinton. And if she had won the election and there were, a bunch of Democrats saying we're going to try to put Bernie Sanders in or whatever, I would be against that. This is not a matter of flacking for Trump. It's a matter of recognizing the instability that might result from what you're doing. So that's my point. Anyway, Bret, thanks a lot for coming on.